Hello again everybody, back with another video. This one I'm calling the Omicron Surge, and a little question: are we being deceived? Now let's have a look at the headlines, because recently on the 15th of December, 15th of this month, we had a massive surge in cases in the UK, and it came just in time for all the decisions that are being made on public freedoms, vax passports, you name it, new restrictions, regulations, laws and so on. It conveniently came right on top of all those things where the MP did some disgusting, horrible votes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But here are the headlines. You can see we hit 78610 cases. And it was all over mainstream media, all over the world. This is CNBC down here. Look, highest number of daily COVID cases since the pandemic began. So it must be serious. Yeah, so we've got this surge, and public warned to scale back Christmas plans, all on this basis. So what basis does it have? We will have a look at the government figures, and firstly let's have a look at the UK government briefing on the 15th of July 2021, where this figure was one of the key parts of the discussions, and clearly this thing is going to escalate into some kind of lockdown, probably. Well, it could be before Christmas in the UK, it could be after, but certainly more and more restrictions and nonsense are all coming back after we had our irreversible roadmap to freedom, the one that was one way and the one that Boris was never going to turn back on. And let's have a look at what the basis of this whole presentation was about.
We're jabbing in hospitals, we're jabbing in surgeries, we're jabbing in pharmacies and in pop-up centres, we're jabbing in shopping centres and on high streets, in football stadiums, with mass events planned at Stamford Bridge and Wembley this weekend, and daily jabathons at Elland Road in Leeds. We are throwing everything at it, and wherever you are, we'll be there with a jab for you. So please, get boosted now. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Chris to do the slides.
Thank you, Prime Minister. First slide, please. I'll start off with slides that people have seen before, the updates, but I think there is an important thing to point out on this slide, which is the very high spike on the very far right of this slide. And as the Prime Minister said, this is a record number of cases. I'm afraid we have to be realistic that records will be broken a lot over the next few weeks as the rates continue to go up. If we look at the overall rates, it looks as if Delta, which we've had with us for a while, is still flat, and the growth is Omicron. So what we've got is two epidemics on top of one another: an existing Delta epidemic, roughly flat, and a growing Omicron, very rapidly growing Omicron epidemic on top of it. Next slide, please.
So based on that graph, he's saying Delta is flat, even though you can see it's steadily going up. And the big spike on the end is due, that's the right hand side, is due to Omicron, this rapidly spreading, doubling every day, exponential growth, infectious, mutated virus. That's what he's saying based on cases. Cases are dependent on the number of tests, and no scientist would ever stand up, if they are truthful, honest and good, would stand up based on one data point and based on a dependent variable, would make that conclusion. So he's either a crap scientist or is a good scientist or a medium scientist that's lying. You can make your decision on that, but that is appalling. So we'll look next at the actual figures, and let's put the testing into the equation too. So there you go, one data point, number of cases, not even mentioning how much testing they're doing. So we have this UK government website here. Here's the URL to go to the data, and you can select cases, testing, deaths, you name it, and it gives you all the figures. It also enables you to load them as a comma separative value data, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet, and you can put all the data into a spreadsheet and do your own analysis. So that's exactly what I've done. So I've just shown you the bottom of the spreadsheet. Actually goes back to I think April 2020, but I've got the date, I've got the cases, I've got the deaths and the total tests. So if we look down here, you can see the deaths, here's the cases. This one, I haven't got the testing data for the 16th, but I'm going up to the 15th. This is the 78,610 cases, 165 deaths, so massive jump, nearly 20,000, and this is apparently Omicron running wild and multiplying. As you'll see later, they're claiming doubling every 2 days. But look at these here, these are the tests. So there you go, we've gone from basically 1,320,000 to 1,636,000 tests. So when you take this data here, so these are the cases or positive tests, and you take it as a proportion of the total tests. So if we take 78610 and we divide by this figure here, we get the number of positive tests per test, and that'll be a very small decimal. But if you multiply by 1,000, it gives you how many cases per 1,000. So we can see here, here's the results. So let's take a look here. We've got some 54 here because we've got this amount of cases, but only 72,000 tests on that day. Sorry, 727,000 tests. So we've got 54. Now we've had like 53, 38, 41, oh sorry, 42, 45, and look at this one. This is the one where all the cases have been announced, a 20,000 jump, but we haven't actually moved with our positive tests per 1,000 tests. So, as I said before, what kind of scientist would just quote cases without taking into account the variable figure, which is tests? A good scientist wouldn't. A non-scientist might, or a very bad scientist might, or a good scientist that's lying through the teeth and trying to deceive might, but not a good, honest scientist, that's for sure. So let's have a look at the graph. So here's all the testing. So this is from the 21st of April 2020. This was around the peak of the first wave when we had the first lockdown in the UK. And look at this, it's just gradually, we had a big surge here, but it's gradually been going up. But look at this, this is the one on the 14th and this is the one on the 15th with these figures here, as I discussed. So let's have a look at the total positive tests or the total cases. This is from the 29th of 11, 2020, all the way through to yesterday's date. Here's the figure that was discussed in the UK government briefing, and this one is the latest, so it's gone up again. So who knows, the testing might have gone up here, I don't know yet, but what I will say is this increase here is due to increased testing. And the reason I know that is because when you look at the number of positive tests per 1,000 tests, so these are all worked out from government figures, here's where you can get the official data. You can see that since early July 2021, the infection rate or the number of positive tests per 1,000 have not budged much at all. And even the last point here isn't anything out of the normal. It's been much, much higher. Right, so let's take a look at the zoomed in version, and this is from the 19th here of July all the way through to the 15th here, and you can see This is our massive increase in cases, but we also had a massive increase in tests. So there it is. Look at that one. No difference, on the same path. And basically this is, it's going up and down a little, but within this range here. But this one is nothing compared to these. So there you go. So they have, just using cases alone, manipulated the public into panic, thinking this thing's taking off. And according to this data, which any good scientist, I've been a scientist for many, many years, and know how to look and know how to interpret data and know not to overact with figures that aren't what we call normalised. You have to, if you've got another variable, you have to take that into account. So there you go. So Whitty, you are, in my mind, a deceiver along with all your other cronies as part of this scam. And here's the deaths, if you want to know. This is from the end of last year through to almost the end of this year. And you can see they're doing very little. There's certainly no surge towards the end, but there again, and according to their data, their infection rates haven't changed over this period, so that's to be expected. So what have our polypuppet leaders been pushing on the back of Omicron? Well, they're now claiming that Omicron has a doubling rate of every 2 days.
First, that it is more transmissible. Omicron is more transmissible than the Delta variant. We can see that the growth in Omicron cases here in the UK is now mirroring the rapid increase that we are seeing in South Africa, and the current observed doubling time is around every 2 days.
And this is all part of the scaremongering for people to accept draconian restrictions, passports, you name it. And basically a doubling rate means if you start with 2 and every 2 days it doubles. So if you put that to the power of 26, bear in mind this is every 2 days, so that will be a double. When you work out days, you only need to double up 26 times to meet the population in the UK, 67 million. So in 52 days, double this, because it doubles every 2 days, the whole of the UK population will have had the dreaded lurgy or have it. And if you start from 4,713 cases, which was quoted on the 13th of December, it will take 28 days to infect the entire UK population, so the 10th of January 2022. What a pile of bollocks, what a ludicrous statement, and this is used to justify all the votes on passports and compulsory medical procedures and so on. And they're also claiming that Omicron, certainly in London, is replacing the Delta variant, which has been scaring us to death for months and months and months. So how on earth does that work?
We can see Omicron spiking now in London and some other parts of the country. Here in the capital, it probably represents about 40% of the cases. By tomorrow, it'll be the majority of the cases, and it's increasing the whole time.
Well, we saw the infection rate there. I showed you it was 45 per 1,000, so that's 4.5. Let's make it 5 per 100. So it's 100 people, and we're going to have 5 people in that 100 group infected, and here we've got the dreaded Delta variants. So when the nasty Omicron comes along, does it just go and kick it out and say goodbye, and that virus then doesn't try and infect all those other people that aren't infected around them? And then we get another one, it says, get lost, oh, I'm out of here. The dreaded Omicron's arrived, and so on, until we replace it all. And these people don't pass on the Delta. Is that how it works? Because that makes 0 sense to me. Hope it makes 0 sense to you. Sounds like a pile of bollocks to me, personally. And just have a look at what they actually voted in based on all this Omicron, all these shitheads here, look, MPs, Masonic puppets, no doubt about that. And they voted in favour of vaccine passports, even though their own data from their health security agency, and these are average values from week 42 report to week 49, there's actually, over that period of time, 1.6 times more infection in the vaccinated group than the unvaccinated group. That's their data. If you want it in percentages, it's roughly 60 to 40. And the last report, 49, was 1.5. So this is the facts according to their data. I mean, you could argue it's all a pile of bollocks, but let's just take their figures for now. And they voted in vaccine passports. So what they're saying now is the most infected group can all cram in a nightclub, and the least infected group's got to stay at home. And these twats voted for that. And the biggest one here, well, they're just puppets, aren't they? But most of the Labour Party didn't even bother to turn up. They just voted en bloc for all these things. And also this wonderful legislation where they're going to force vaccination onto NHS staff and social care staff, the people that are our heroes apparently, that we clap for. It's basically no jab, no job. And this is a disgusting, horrible, evil thing that those even got the gall to be filmed voting for it. And again, based on that data, where the biggest infection rate is in the vaccinated group, they went ahead and voted for that. Now, they have all this data, they know this data. If it was a caring government that was there to look after you, why on earth would they do that when they have that data? It's just purely, clearly a narrative. It's a plan. It's a route to get to wherever they want. You took Agenda 2030, whatever goes with that is all part of this. And let's have a look now just at a little bit more on 42, which seems to be a significant code for Omicron. Now, Omicron in full reduction, English or Pythagorean numerology, is 7 times 7 minus 7 and 6 times 6 plus 6. So 777 and 666, a big number linking principal PSYOP hoax codes, and of course the 666 number, which appears lots and lots of times. And this was a report recently about the growing wave of mutant Omicron variant in Sydney, and there were 42 Omicron cases and then 420 new COVID cases. So there's a 42 in the O for Omicron, the 42 number, and of course, as we said, it's 666 and 777, the only number that brings those two key codes together. Now, we've also had Boris doing basically a presentation to the public, and we also had Javid spouting some nonsense as well. And that number crops up. So let's take a look at those videos and I'll show you the code in that.
Yesterday, we reported there were 4,713 confirmed cases of Omicron in the UK. The UK HSA estimate that for the number of daily infections was 42 times higher at 200,000.
We will also assist this emergency operation by deploying 42 military planning teams across every health region, standing up additional vaccine sites and mobile units.
And if we have a look at the gematria of jabs into arms, which you hear quite a lot, there's another 42, which is 7 by 7 minus 7 and 6 times 6 plus 6. So that's all I've got to say for now. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and don't get too scared by the Omicron virus. Goodbye.